Good afternoon, dear colleagues and guests. Today it is the 26th of May 2021, 2 p.m. according to Moscow time. Allow me to consider open the meeting of the Dissertation Council for the defense of Gleb Andreev's dissertation for the degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences in the scientific specialization 240001, the theory and history of culture, on the topic the problem of freedom in English and utopia, according to the order of Gnotov, St. Petersburg University Scientific Secretary, dated from 11th of March 2021. Me, Boris Sokolov, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Professor, Head of the Department of Culturology, Philosophy of Culture and Aesthetics, St. Petersburg University, was appointed the chairperson of this dissertation council, and by the same order the members of the dissertation council were approved. Let me introduce them. Andreev, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Professor, Head of the Department of Philosophy, St. Petersburg Mining University. Makhleva Svetlana, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Professor on St. Petersburg State Institute of Culture. In the remote interactive mode, we have got Salveiga Krumenia-Kankova, Doctor of Philosophy, Chief Scientific Employee in the Institute of Philosophy and Sociology, Latvian University, correspondent member of the Latvian Academy of Sciences, Latvia. Salveiga, can you see and hear us? Yes, I can. Perfect. Thank you very much for participation and for your feedback. Sergei Nikonenko, Doctor of Philosophy, Professor of the Department of Ontology and Cognitive Theory, St. Petersburg University. Can you see and hear us? Yes, everything is okay. Our applicant, Gleb Andreev, is also here with us. Also here with us, there is a scientific supervisor, Larissa Morina, Doctor of Philosophy, Associate Professor of the Department of Culturology, Philosophy of Culture and Aesthetics, St. Petersburg University. To improve the quality of communication, I ask you, dear colleagues, in the remote interactive mode, to turn off your microphones when you don't speak, but don't forget to turn them on when you are given the floor. I also inform you that audio and video recording of our meeting is being conducted, as well as live broadcast on St. Petersburg University website. Simultaneous interpretation of speeches from Russian into English or from English into Russian is being provided if it is necessary. At this time, an email address is posted on the live broadcast of the meeting of the Dissertation Council, where during the meeting all listeners can express their opinions and send questions to the applicant online concerning his dissertation and the current scientific discussion of his speech. These questions will be forwarded to me by the technical services, and I will voice them during the discussion. Questions must be related to the applicant's presentation and the content of his dissertation, and the name, position, and place of work of the author of the question must be indicated. Questions that are not related to the scientific discussion, to the discussion of the dissertation, to the text and assessment of the dissertation itself will not be voiced. In accordance with the procedure for awarding the academic degree of Candidate of Sciences, academic degree of Doctor of Sciences at St. Petersburg University, a meeting of the Dissertation Council is considered eligible if at least 2/3 of the approved membership of the Council takes part in its work, but not less than 4 people. Our Dissertation Council consists of 5 people, including those 2 in the remote interactive mode. The procedure of today's meeting of the Dissertation Council is the following. Number 1, a brief report of the chairman on the documents submitted by the applicant and their compliance with the established requirements. Answers to possible questions about 5 minutes. A short presentation by the applicant for a scientific degree reflecting the main points of his research, approximately 15 minutes. Questions to the applicant strictly according to his report, no more than 2 minutes per question. Answers of the applicant no more than 15 minutes for all questions. Speeches of all members of the Dissertation Council in turn, with the assessment of the dissertation research, with the summary of their positions, with questions and suggestions for the dissertation. About 10 minutes per speaker. Please stick to the agenda. The speech of the chairman with his review, about 10 minutes. Answers of the applicants for a scientific degree to questions and comments of the members of the Dissertation Council, no more than 15 minutes. Then open discussion, no more than 2 minutes per speaker. At this time, all the volunteers are requested to register in the registration sheet and before their speech fully introduce themselves. Presentation by the chairman of the questions addressed to the applicant, which came in order to discuss his speech and scientific discussion on the broadcast of the meeting of the Dissertation Council on the website of St. Petersburg University. Answers of the applicant, no more than 2 minutes per question. Speech of the scientific supervisor of the applicant, no more than 3 minutes. Discussion of the results of the defense by the members of the Dissertation Council before the open vote, during which the sound of the broadcast is muted, about 5 minutes. Open roll call, counting of votes by the chairman of the Dissertation Council with the entry of the results into the meaning of the meeting, if it is necessary. Making a decision on awarding or not awarding an academic degree, concluding remarks of the applicant, no more than 2 minutes. Dear colleagues, are there any questions or objections to this regulation? Dear Salveige and Sergei, do you have any questions or objections? No questions or objections. If there are no objections, I will proceed to the implementation of the rules of the meeting. The first point about the dissertation of Andreev Gleb, Specialisation 24001, Theory and History of Culture, the Problem of Freedom in English Anti-Utopia, was accepted for the defense by the order of Gnotov, the academic secretary of our university, from the 9th of February 2021, number 969/1. Gleb Andreev wrote his dissertation research, the basis of St. Petersburg University. His scientific supervisor is Larissa Morina, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Associate Professor, Professor of the Department of Culturology, Philosophy of Culture and Aesthetics, St. Petersburg University. The number of publications of the applicant, in which the main scientific results of the dissertation are stated, according to the list presented, 3 publications. There are 3 articles in peer-reviewed scientific publications from the list approved by the Ministry of Education and Science of the Russian Federation. There are no publications in journals indexed in scientometric databases Web of Science and Scopus. The applicant for the degree submitted to the scientific secretary a complete package of documents for acceptance, for consideration and defense of the thesis. All documents correspond to clause 12 of section 3 of the procedure. All the documents submitted by the applicant on the information are received from the curator, meet the requirements and are stored in the applicant's certification file. Their copies are held by an employee of the Department for Maintenance the Activities of Dissertation Council, who is now in the hall. Before giving the floor to the applicant, dear members of the Dissertation Council, do you have general questions to the applicant? And if there is a necessity, to announce and consider the entire list of documents submitted by the applicant for the defense? No questions. Thus, brief presentation of the applicant. The floor is given to Gleb Andreev. In order to get acquainted the main results of this study, I want to remind the text of the dissertation is in open access. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Boris. Thank you for coming. Distinguished board members, thank you very much. Those who are in the remote interactive mode, thank you very much for participation in today's discussion. Ecuadorian writer and diplomat Juan Montalva claims that there is nothing more severe than the gentleness and indifference. The authors of dystopias have always received numerous reproaches as incidentally the authors of utopias before them. However, they could not be blamed for one thing, for their indifference to the future of humanity, since, in one way or another, the task of the authors of dystopias was to prevent the future presented in them from becoming possible. As a researcher, it was interesting for me to find out whether it is possible to identify possible aspects from the stream of various denials that fill the dystopia, including with the help of which any methodology that was not previously used for this. As a result of the preparatory work for the dissertation, it became clear that freedom can become such an aspect through the prism of which utopia and dystopia are considered an experimental methodology. As an experimental methodology, Huenzia's play approach was used, but in relation to utopia-dystopia. After analyzing the context of dystopia, the purpose of the dissertation research was determined, studying the problem of the freedom in the context of dystopia as a phenomenon of English culture, determining the place of freedom in the hierarchy of values of English dystopia, and analyzing the reasons for the separation of dystopia from utopia from the point of view of understanding freedom, its place in society, and meaning for the personality. The object of the research is dystopia as a phenomenon of European culture. The subject is the problem of freedom as one of the central problems of English dystopia. The English tradition was chosen because it is widely represented by various works. The English literary creativity has not long lost interest in utopias and dystopias throughout the foreseeable history of these genres. In order for the study to be as complete as possible, the first chapter as part of the second were devoted to the analysis of English utopian projects from the point of view of understanding freedom. These are Utopia by Thomas More, New Atlantis by Francis Bacon, Law of Freedom by Winstanley, Republic of Oceania by Garrington, News from Nowhere by Morris. Part of the second chapter is also devoted to approaches to the definition of freedom, and the third to a direct analysis of dystopia, including the three classic dystopian texts, Brave New World of Huxley and Animal Farm, and 1984 by Orwell. The last chapter analyzes the text of Dystopian Self-Reflection 1985 by Burks and Return to the Brave New World by Huxley. As a result of the research, the following scientific results were obtained. Dystopia is the ear to utopian philosophical thought, and from the point of view of the philosophical tradition of reasoning about the best structure of society, dystopia can be called meta-utopia, since historically and terminologically it follows utopia, but it has a number of fundamental conceptual differences that directly affect the form of reasoning and its conclusions. That is why utopian works can be attributed in form to the genre of philosophical essays. Dystopian works in their form and content belong to novels. As it has been shown, utopia and dystopia in the philosophical sense are historically one philosophical tradition. Modern dystopia is characterized by intertextuality and the use of various tools to comprehend the English utopian tradition, and their continuity at this stage is inseparable. As the study has shown, during the historical turn from the phenomenon of utopia to the phenomenon of anti-utopia, along with other historical reasons, there is also a change in the meaning of freedom for the authors of these works. Utopia considers freedom as an instrumental value for achieving and maintaining the final value, happiness, while anti-utopia considers freedom as one of the final values. Thus, freedom plays the role of a tool for achieving the ideal in utopia, and at the same time acts as the ideal of anti-utopia in different forms. Criticism of reality occupies an extensive place in dystopian works. Dystopia extrapolates the features of modern development and the popularity of ideas to the area of the future where these features are exaggerated and pushed to the limit. Lack of freedom as one of the main anti-values of such a future society is one of the main objects of criticism in anti-utopia. Freedom, on the contrary, in an allegorical form, is one of the main values for anti-utopians. Basic concepts of the playful concept of culture by John Huizinga. Such a play pretends seriousness, Spielbrecher, and the main features of these elements help to consider the historical turn from utopia to anti-utopia and can be considered as an additional tool for understanding this historical transition. One of the proofs that hypothesis of application of the game concept of culture in relation to utopia and anti-utopia works is the material obtained from the analysis of anti-utopian texts. Using this method, a conclusion was drawn about the transformation of anti-utopia from the period of the first half of the 20th century. The gradual romanticization of the idea of the individual's struggle for freedom can be considered as a criterion for assessing the change in anti-utopia and reveals the absence of aesthetic position in assessing the future as one of the features of anti-utopia. Numerous textual confirmation and consideration of the series Black Mirror illustrate this hypothesis. Dystopia being the most complete and systematic reflection of all anti-values of modern society allows us to assess the state of the axiosphere of modern society, to highlight its final values, as well as to establish the historical conditions for the formation of these values and their meanings in the era of European Enlightenment. And the research carried out in the above way allowed us to look differently at the problem of the origin of dystopia and its differences with utopia, at the problem of freedom in works of these genres. I liked your dissertation very much. Please, questions to the applicant, if there are such questions. Dear board members who are in the remote access mode, do you have any questions? No questions, but if there are any, you can ask them later. And now the main part of our meeting, the feedback of board members. If I'm not mistaken, there are no external reviews. That's why we have get down to business and speeches of our board members. Please voice them. I would like to draw your attention to the agenda, 10 minutes per speaker. Dear colleagues, all your speeches were published on St. Petersburg University website. That's why please focus on the main points. Advantages, strong and weak points of the work. Please, the speeches of our board members. Nikonenko, Sergei Nikonenko, are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. Can you hear me well? Thank you. Just as recommended, I will follow the recommendation of the chairman. I will be as brief as possible. I deal with analytical philosophy. It's a great pleasure for me to be a board member. The dissertation is devoted to the problematics in English anti-utopia. Such utopian works, English works, they are closely connected with liberally oriented political analytical philosophy. Orwell, Russell, for example, Rawls, they are interconnected figures, more or less. And when I worked with this dissertation, I always wanted to criticize our candidate, to see anything somewhere, but I was sure that specialization, it is not an ontology and the theory of cognition. It is the theory and history of culture, and I would like to praise our candidate for that. We see culturological work on actual topic, dialectics of utopia and anti-utopia present in the work, and it is poorly studied in our country, and the plan is very clear hidden philosophical background, this genre of anti-utopia. It is very important why anti-utopia appears, what are its roots, what supplements anti-utopia, what contrasts it. The strongest side of work is the attraction, the use of poorly studied anti-utopian works of anti-utopian works of the beginning of 21st century. They are unknown. Most parts of them are unknown for me. And publications, speeches reflect the content of the dissertations, but at the same time, the work is not free from drawbacks. The provision 4 is not clearly formulated. Different intertextual tools are important for English utopias, but from this admission we can't judge quotation. The historical legacy of utopian genre is significant for English political thought. I will explain. I don't mean that anti-utopian and utopian works are significant for philosophical political thought. Number 2, and remark, philosophical theoretical basis of the work is the work of continental philosophers. Our candidate writes about English utopia for these dialectics of English and continental is very actual, and that's why it is shocking that continental Austria is the philosophical basis. The main place takes Johann. At the same time, there are no ideas of English philosophers reflecting about utopian cognition. Russell, Berling, Terrell, Oxshott, and others. Of course, for explaining this topic, the basis of German philosophy is enough, but there are some discrepancies. Why? You know that English philosophers are not used in your reflections, and the works of mentioned authors were translated into Russian. And finally, number 3 of theoretical character. I will formulate it briefly. Page 148, conclusions. There is no distinction between instrumental on the one hand and final values concerning anti-utopia. Nevertheless, my remarks don't spoil overall impression of the scientific work. That's why the dissertation of our candidate on the topic, the problem of freedom in English anti-utopia. It conforms with the main requirements of the order, procedure on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and our candidate, Gleb Andreev, deserves the degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences on the specialization. Sergei Vitalyevich, thank you very much. Gleb, are you going to answer after each speaker? It would be better to answer after each speaker. It will yes, it. Dear Salvega, your feedback. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to read this interesting work. For me, it is the second dissertation on this topic. It was interesting for me to compare schools in Latvia and Russia, how we consider this topic, the common and different things. I will be as brief as possible. Let me read out my review. I would like to highlight it was a great pleasure for me to read this work, and I want to say that the author is very good and used text as modern research on problematics of the dissertation paper. His conceptual approach, analysis of the sources and scientific literature, as well as formed conclusions of the author are valid and reasoned. But at the same time, after reading and during the reading of the dissertation, I had some reflections, and they were difficult to understand the interpretation of author's ideas and his approaches to the analysis of the material. First of all, I can agree with the first colleague. The list of researchers who deal with the utopia and anti-utopia can be supplemented, and it will be interesting for me to know the names of modern foreign researchers apart from Russian ones who dealt with utopia and dystopia. I could not see any foreign name in the list of literature sources. And the author formulates the aims and tasks of work, defines the methods of the research and structure of work, and the expected results. And here we can notice that in order to achieve this aim, 8 tasks were formulated, and I tried to follow this logic. I had some problems connected with last tasks because I could not understand to full extent why these tasks were separated, why are not, because in my opinion these tasks 7 and 8 on study of characteristics of modern anti-utopias and anti-utopias in cinematography. In my opinion, they are not necessary here, and unfortunately it was reflected in the text, because the focus on the problem of freedom in these last chapters disappears between excessively long storylines and of books or films. There is a serious question concerning the approach to the research, because when the author lists methods used in his research, one of the methods is systematic approach, which allows to consider the concept of utopians and anti-utopians as full social functional system. But these methods were not used not to full extent. The author shows the development utopia and anti-utopian and internal logics of the development, but of course ideas can't appear from nowhere, but when the author creates utopia, he is in the context of social, political, cultural and religious ideas which influence his choice, the storyline he creates. I could not see these contexts. I lacked these contexts in your study, especially concerning utopia and anti-utopia, because to understand Thomas More, because the discussion of humanists, his attitude to religious thematics is not enough. And I could not see this context in the dissertation, unfortunately. And from my point of view, it is here it is a drawback. There are several questions. I'm sure that you know these questions. Of course, it would be interesting for me to know how utopias influence the situations of religious tolerance in England when they were created. Maybe these utopias influence the idea of religious tolerance. It would be interesting for me to know these dialectics. Secondly, I can't understand page 76. I can't, when you write that world tendency in forming of modern man, I try to understand. I can't imagine a world tendency in forming of a modern person. It is, I'm sure that we won't find this world general tendency. It would be very interesting for me. What you mean? Number 3, the third question is connected with your reflection that many anti-utopians, for example, Shakespeare, they consider William Shakespeare, English tradition, to address Shakespeare in all anti-utopians directly or with the help of references, page 122, and the short question. Despite these critical remarks, I think that Gleb Andreev achieved the tasks, and I appreciate the dissertation and very well conducted research. It is a serious contribution into the study of the problematics of utopias and anti-utopias. Thank you. Salvega, thank you very much. I think that Gleb will answer the questions afterwards. Please, Mr. Dorofeev, the floor is yours. Dear colleagues, there is no voice in the microphone. I will be as brief as possible. Sorry, I forgot to switch on my microphone. I'm not going to read out or retell my feedback. I will try to be as brief as possible. You will hear my impressions, reflections and assessments concerning this work. I will focus on the principle of our chairman to be as brief as possible. Let me start with the most important thing. My review is positive, but for the author of the dissertation, it is more, the remarks are more important, taking into account the fact that Gleb Andreev is a part of philosophical scientific life, and I hope that he will continue his further research in this sphere. The fact of the dissertation is a positive event, and thanks to this, the degree can be given automatically. I praise that a person chooses St. Petersburg University, philosophy, science. I would like to start with critical remarks, which are connected with different aspects, but they are the reverse side of the pluses. Also, clear, logical language without complications. The English language should be the same, and the work which is devoted to English culture and philosophy, it was written in English. Then I would like to say a few words about the structure of the work and constant remark concerning the dissertation. The elaboration of structure, it is the most important part that and of course I would like to start the genesis of the problem of the topic is necessary. It is necessary because, as my previous colleague mentioned, if we consider Thomas More beyond humanistic tradition, also it is not correct not to take into account Platon, the pioneer of anti-utopia, the limited character of the space and so on. It does not work, and show how utopia, the evolution of the utopia from Greece, European medieval utopia, is a separate stage, very interesting stage. For example, the travel of Holy Green Gull is a sheer and bright example. And to show the line, not only to retell that Plato writes this or those things, it is necessary to uncover genesis in a historical perspective. It is necessary to try to uncover and explain this historical character. And it is a drawback. You pay a lot of attention to the retelling of the content of utopias, but you write them for educated people, more or less, who wrote Thomas More, New Atlantis, and to retell the main content of the description of these works. It is not the best thing. It is better to devote it to conceptual analysis. For example, if you take the problem of relationships between women and men, it is better to consider them on the examples of anti-utopia. On the one hand, you would introduce the topic. On the other hand, this content would be conceptualized in specific perspective, and it would uncover a very important topic of human relationships or relationships between people and state. It would be better and more effective and productive. But you chose another way, and the responsibility, the name the title of your dissertation contains the word freedom. It is a very important fact. And if it is necessary to find the form, try to uncover the philosophical sense of this concept. You want to receive the degree of candidate of philosophical sciences, and despite the culturological character of your study, and these culturological things should be explained and presented in your work. And for that, you should have addressed such philosophers who formed the concept of freedom in European philosophy. It is not necessary to create a separate paragraph in your dissertation. It would be better to concentrate this experience and shift it into the space of your topic. Of course, it would be better to think the topic in more detail. You should have tried to find such content links. I hope that you will take into account in the near future, use it in your further research. Of course, there are always drawbacks in candidate paper. It is pleasant that you try to actualize your topic, not to make it archive. If we use the expression of Marco Broca, who applied this expression in terms of history, the topic should not be archived. You tried to explain it on actual examples. Also, modern culture. We are involved into of course, digital concepts can be introduced here, but it is the next stage. It is the problem of cinema, philosophy, literature, even the internet. It is in place if we understand philosophical perspective of your topic. I am sure that you will continue your further research in this aspect. I hope so. Philosophers need replenishment. In conclusion, I understand that I am pressed for time. The dissertation of Gleb Andreev on the topic with the problem of freedom in English anti-utopia conforms with the main requirements stated by the order from the 1st of September 2016, number 6821/1, procedure on awarding academic degrees at St. Petersburg University, and our candidate Gleb Andreev deserves the degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences, specialization 24/001, theory and history of culture. Thank you very much. The next feedback, Svetlana, the floor is yours. I am glad that I was invited for this defense. The form is very interesting and new for me and very productive. I would like to express my gratitude that I joined the consideration of this interesting dissertation. I have no remarks concerning this paper. I was amazed. I was impressed. It is brilliantly structured. The structure of the dissertation proves the interest of problematics of the candidate. Genesis of the research of anti-utopia, and the first chapter is logically devoted to the effect of to the explanation of anti-utopia, particularly in English literature. I was impressed by the level of knowledge, erudition, and so the author shows the broad spectre. He broadly researches utopia in correlation with freedom. It was done accurately. When you study anti-utopia, the authors, specialists who wrote about anti-utopia were used, novels were used, Huxley, Orwell, Burgess are very well known. Our author takes modern authors. Unfortunately, I did not read them, and the study was conducted at high professional level. Apart from the analysis, theoretical analysis, you show the materials on modern cinematography. It is very difficult to conduct such an analysis. Specific knowledge, professionalism should be presented. Everything was done very accurately. I have no remarks to the study, to the work. I am sure that the work is brilliant. It conforms with all modern parameters, and Gleb Andreev, without doubt, deserves the degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences. Thank you. Svetlana, it is a revolution in the situation with the defense. Usually there are drawbacks. Thank you very much. Now the floor is mine. Let me start with a different thing from the comment from one social network concerning anti-utopia, but this anti-utopia is Soviet Russian, Kinzadza. I hope you saw this film. At first, I saw Kinzadza when I was 10. I did not understand anything then. When I was 15 years old, and I laughed at QU, then I looked at the age of 23. Now I am 42, and I live in this film. I live within this film. The actuality of the work is in the fact that now we live within this anti-utopia due to isolation, coronavirus limitations. The work is actual. I liked it. Of course, I'm not going for a long time why I liked this work. In order to save our time, I will turn to drawbacks. The work is decent, professional, and so on. I have a different view in comparison to my colleagues, board members. It is a usual thing. If we sum up our remarks, we will receive a doctoral thesis. The first remark is connected with the remark of Professor Dorofeev. I would like, concerning the ontology of freedom, philosophy, you see the lack of drawback of philosophy in the fact that there is a lot of Kant. But if we take Sartre, Camus, Frenchmen have freedom, equality, and brotherhood, as we may know, and they say a lot of positive things about freedom. And when the main topic is utopia and anti-utopia of freedom, I agree with you, and it would be better to improve some ideas. Then you use concept of play. It is a methodological drawback. It is not enough. For example, if you take the concept of play to the concept of freedom. And the last remark, as we live in media space today and the text becomes media and we are becoming keyboards in media situation, it is good that you address cinematography, but I lacked cinematography, not soap opera, serial cinematography, but I would like you to conceptualize cinematography experience. It would improve your dissertation. These three remarks, of course, tastes differ, but I'm sure that it is admissible. My main conclusion concerning your work, it conforms with the regulations, requirements. Without doubt, you deserve the degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences on the specialization. I tried to be as brief as possible, and now, according to our agenda, dear all those who are present, dear candidate, please answer all the speeches, all the remarks. You can sum up several similar questions in your answer. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude for this feedback. It was very pleasant for me to read them. Of course, feedback is also very important, and it allows to improve my vision, and I'm not going to get rid of my further research. All the remarks were kind and useful. I would like to answer them personally. Boris summed up all the questions concerning different authors. All board members, apart from Svetlana, lacked some authors. I want to draw your attention to the fact that none of you repeated one surname twice. It proves that the history is complicated concerning the freedom, and everyone can find specific authors which could be used in my work. For me, it's a rather positive experience. As for personal feedback, let us start with Sergei Nikonenko. I suppose that a typo has crept in his feedback, since the fourth provision in the text sounds like this. Various intertextual devices, such as dialogical interaction of text, multiple citation and references, are formative devices of the English utopian discourse, including anti-utopia, which proves that the historical heritage of the utopian genre is of great importance to English utopian thought. Legacy refers to any works that are related to utopias, which are a source of inspiration for the dystopian genre. Utopian thought is very important and is starting point for the utopia. Anti-utopia comes after, follows utopia, and first of all I wanted to write about anti-utopia, but nearly zero extent of research forced me to address utopia. The legacy of utopia, which is reflected in English anti-utopia islands, is of high significance. As for the source base, Berlin was mentioned in section 2.2 with Bertrand Russell. It is more and more difficult once a statement about his views cost him a seat in parliament. If to be seriously, yesterday I reread his position about the his radical position utopia and anti-utopia are limited by the frames, and they are limited by the genre, by the context, and how can they be lifted with the Russell's concept. As for Popper, the story is different. He is independent. No one except Winstanley openly among utopians declared utopia as a political manifesto. Here we are talking about talking more about tyranny, autocracy, and other positions. For the same reason, for example, the approach of Roger Scruton, who developed Oakeshott's ideas, did not get into the study. His interpretation of utopia as an unreal object of real desire, believing utopia to be the results of self-deception but with impeccable logical motivation, are not supported by the material of English utopia. At the same time, in discussions about self-deception, one of the list of conditions is belief in utopia. It would be possible to paraphrase your remark that the instrumental values of the dystopia are not indicated. And this is so. The dystopia perhaps is not yet at that level, although obviously it will be there one day when it begins to talk about the means of achieving the final value. Which path will be chosen by the authors? It will be definitely not undertake. So please be brief. You know that you are limited to 2 minutes per question. As for the question of Dr. Krummennikova, it seems to me that the first question, the question is very brilliant and interesting. Without call it Razm Rotterdamski Lulit, it is impossible to consider genesis of Thomas More and his utopias. It is impossible to consider utopias modern understanding of tolerance, which is beyond religious understanding. Utopias seriously influence, especially in England, they are in England, vice versa, they strongly influenced the process of freedom for formation. As for general world tendency, here I meant after the First and the Second World War, there was a specific uncertainty and the state of search for new tendency, the attempt of explain this new tendency, potential character of this further life. I meant that formally. This is the same process of gaining freedom and independence from empires. A clear education gives a turn from utopia to dystopia. Its authors quite sensitively felt the change in discourse and in some way expressed it. I meant the process of freedom and tendency. Why Shakespeare? I should have pointed out here that this is a question for future research. I personally have a guess. It is based on three aspects. Number one, a BBC study in 2011 found that 75% of British is proud of Shakespeare, the highest score for any formulation. There are no individuals here anymore. This is one side. The second aspect is literature. Shakespeare not only invented new words, but also used old ones in a new way, as well as the double meaning of almost every phrase in canonical works or reference. This is a favorite technique of Shakespeare and later dystopians. Finally, the last aspect, in the spirit of Huizinga, the whole world is a theater. And what is theater? No matter how serious and pretense are played, I think it is for these reasons that is so popular. I think that due to these three reasons, Shakespeare is a reference which also appears in anti-utopias. Daniil Dorofeev, his remark about I lacked boldness to and courage to, I didn't manage to uncover, I didn't want to do it intentionally, that anti-utopia will turn into new utopia, cycles change which change each other. As for the remark about Marx and Kant, these are points for my future growth. It is a positive feedback. And as for the roots of Plato, it seems to me that Plato is very significant figure. I did not want to address utopia, and intentionally I wanted to deepen myself, and I will follow your advice and use it in future. Svetlana, thank you for your praise. It is very, very pleasant for me. As for Boris Sokolov, I agree with the position that this is not an exhaustive list of reasons for the turn from utopia to anti-utopia. I will note that as reasons I also try to point out some conceptual points from the books of Roti, Simmel, and so on. With regard to cinema, an amendment to the title of the paragraph was required when this misunderstanding would not have arisen. At the same time, I still want to clarify why the choice was stopped at the Black Mirror. Directly English dystopian film adaptations are few, modern and even more so. Most of the films of this kind are Hollywood, and I did not want to take another paradigm, albeit in English, because it has its own specifics. In fact, I agree. Of course, this is a good wish, and I would also broaden the application to Huizinga's ideas to dystopia. the difference between American and English anti-utopia should be taken into account. I had no opportunity and desire to do it. It seems to me that it is good advice to find some successful, brilliant screen version, and it will answer all the questions of the concept of culture. Thank you very much. I have finished. Distinguished board members, are you satisfied with the answers of our candidate? Yes, we are satisfied. Perfect. Let us turn to our next section. Are there any volunteers, non-board members, to ask questions? No volunteers. If I'm not mistaken, as curator informed me, on the website of St. Petersburg University there are no questions. That's why our candidate does not need to answer them. And now I would like to give the floor to Larissa, scientific supervisor, about her candidate, Larissa Morina, Doctor of Philosophical Sciences, Professor. Distinguished board members, distinguished those who are present, a few words about my candidate. Board members studied the work in details. Their remarks were useful for both of us, not only for the candidate but also for the scientific supervisor. I would like to say a few words about Gleb. It was very pleasant to work with him and interesting, pleasant. Our cooperation started in 2016 when he became postgraduate student. He came with the topic, with the radio topic. We had a specific topic to analyze. And since the very beginning, our candidate was focused on the area of the study. He was greatly involved. I was impressed by this fact. He lived and breathed with this topic. I see that my candidate has grown up. Our candidate continues his further research. I hope that all the remarks of the board members will be useful for his further research. What else I would like to mention? I want to say that he is actively working in his artistic direction. He is actively participating in conferences. He has got a lot of reports. Only at Moscow State University he reported 3 or 4 times. He received the award. He has got 8 publications. 3 of them are in peer-reviewed journals from Higher Attestations Commission. He participates in the preparation of the draft version. In this sphere, I hope that he will continue his future work. As for my attitude towards the work, I am satisfied with the results of our mutual work. I'm sure that the work, despite its drawbacks, is successful and completed work, and in my opinion, it can be recommended to the defense. Thank you very much. Larissa, thank you very much. And according to our agenda, are there any volunteers to have the floor among board members, among those who are present? No volunteers. Are there any other questions via email? No questions. Then the discussion and the receiving of questions are finished. Before the conclusion and voting, I have to ask board members and our applicants, are there any questions or remarks concerning the procedure of the defense concerning the remote access mode? Dear colleagues, no questions. Wonderful. The next point of the agenda, now it is 3:10 p.m. according to Moscow time. Before the vote, we have an opportunity, if it is necessary, to announce technical break and discuss the results of the defense. Dear board members, do you have such a necessity to discuss the course of our meeting in the break, during the break? No desire. Now let us continue our meeting, and I would like to be sure, can you see and hear us well? Sergey and Salvega. Yes, we can see and hear you well. And now I raise the question on awarding the academic degree Specialization 240001 Theory and History of Culture on an open roll call. I remind you that the decision is considered positive if 2/3 of the council voted for, but no less than 4 persons. Sergey, I'm for. Salvega, your opinion? I'm for. Daniil Dorofeev, your opinion? I'm for. Svetlana, I'm for. And my opinion is positive. I'm also for. Thus, with the help, voted for. 5 people voted for the degree, no one voted against, and no one abstained from vote. Thus, I can say that the decision on awarding Gleb Andreev an academic degree of the candidate of philosophical sciences in the scientific specialization 24001 Theory and History of Culture is accepted. Dear colleagues, due to the fact that our meeting is held with the participants in the remote access mode, do the members of the Dissertation Council or applicants and others have questions, comments on the procedure for holding the meeting? No questions. Thus, despite COVID limitations, putting on the mask, I will give the floor to, will congratulate our applicant, and after that I will give him the floor for his final word. Your final remark, brief remark. I thank all the board members for their work. I understand their efforts. I will try to take into account their remarks. I thank everyone, especially board members who are in the remote interactive mode. I would like to thank my supervisor. I would like to thank my relatives and my teachers who I met on the way of my studies. As long as we remember our teachers in their lessons, the worst anti-utopia is hardly possible. After all, who owns the past owns the future. Thank you very much. Before the live broadcast is switched off, I would like to thank everyone who took part in our meeting. Sergey, Solveig, Daniil, and Svetlana. I would like to express my gratitude to you for your feedback, for your participation, and on behalf of the university, I also would like to express my gratitude. Thank you very much, and now we are finishing our meeting. Goodbye. Please switch off the live broadcast of